I organized a martial arts training camp on the island of Palawan in the Philippines, and a very beautiful island. And the camp involved multiple boating trips to isolated islands, and every day we traveled to an island, had lunch out there, and trained out there.
I went to SHOT Show 2016 and I asked people this question. Tell me about your worst or best outdoor experience.
My boss said, I got a job for you. We want you to ride every single drainage of this mountain range from bottom to the top, documenting everything that you see, forage-wise, wildlife, whatever, and take lots of pictures. So from August to November of that year, I would leave on Monday with 2 pack horses in tow, camp wherever I ended up for the night, and ride back out on Thursday. And so, I mean, I was in thunderstorms, I had lightning cracking all around me, I had trees falling right in front of me while I was riding, lots of different stuff that happened that could have been really bad, but it was also really memorable, because people don't do that anymore. And gave me it's right up my alley, because that's what I do in my free time, so I got paid to do that.
A couple years ago, I was out in Glacier National Park.
When I was hiking through the woods in Canada one year.
Best was last year. The first time I go out with my son.
And I was backpacking. It was about winter, and everyone was telling me that I needed to pack a lot of clothes and a sub-zero sleeping bag because there was a storm coming in. As luck would have it, it was really nice weather, clear blue skies. There was actually a strange warm wind blowing down from the mountain, which is peculiar. And I slept on the ground just with my jacket on, and it was amazing. Got to stare at the stars for about 5 hours until I just passed out.
And I was following a river, just a little creek that went into a lake. And I kind of came across this clearing, you know, that opened up. I had no idea what it was, and there was a series of 4 beaver dams that were about 5 feet tall each that created this entire lake, and it was just the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Couldn't believe it. Just surreal, amazing.
Hunting, that was the best. Worst, you know, being outdoors, I don't think I really had a worst. You know, being out there, no matter what you do, you know, you go hunt, you don't get nothing, fine. You go fishing, you don't catch nothing, you know, there's always tomorrow. So I really couldn't say I had a worst.
I think probably my best outdoor experience is working with Paralyzed Veterans of America and taking a whole bunch of wounded and paralyzed soldiers out to Tyonek in Alaska and bear hunting with them, and spending like 3 weeks out in the wilderness with a bunch of young soldiers, a bunch of young heroes, and hunting and sharing and getting to know each other, and the time spent was incredible.
As a young guy growing up in northern Maine and going fishing with my grandfather.
My best recently, I guess, and that was going with my family and going up to Alaska to go fishing.
Probably my favorite experience that I had outdoors actually happened to me last year. My wife and I were out fishing in Port St. Joe, Florida.
This is many years ago, and it was in the 70s. This guy was in his mid-70s, and he's going through the woods like a guy that's in his mid-30s, and we're just bowling through the woods, going fishing in little brooks up in northern Maine. That's some of my fondest memories of growing up and being with him.
We went to the Kenai River there and went out, I'm drawing a blank on the name, but we went halibut fishing out in the inlet and everything, in the ocean there, and just the bay, I guess. But I mean, just fantastic trip, man. Just very lucky and again blessed to be able to do these things.
You know, I hooked on a big monster shrimp, tossed it out into the bay there, handed her the fishing pole. Just before I had a chance to sit down, she hooked a humongous 52-pound black drum, and it was just awesome to watch her reel it in. And I really enjoy fishing. You know, I do a lot of hunting as well, but fishing is definitely one of my biggest passions in terms of being outside. It's the most therapeutic to me, and that's definitely one of the memories that I'll always have.
Tell me about your worst or best outdoor experience.
I would say probably the first time that I went hunting.
Out antelope hunting in Montana. It was the last day of the hunt. I hadn't got my animal.
I shot my first deer with a bow 45 minutes into the first day I ever started hunting, first season I ever started hunting, and it was bigger than any deer that any of my friends shot.
And I went with a bunch of friends and people who I'd worked with at the time, and it was just fun just going out there. It's basically glorified camping with guns because we didn't catch anything, and I kept taking things out to eat, and obviously I'm sure the wildlife smelled that, and we kept getting in trouble from the person who was actually there to hunt. But I think that was just a great time, just going out my first time and being able to, we had guns, just a bunch of guys going out and enjoying the great outdoors and pretending that we could catch something.
We were hunting with a bunch of people in our party, and one gentleman who was a little bit, shall we say, elderly. He and I were the last two that hadn't gotten our animals, so we got set up in an ambush while the other guys drove the animals to us. And my uncle said to me, I want you to be right over here by Leonard. Don't worry, he's a pretty good shot. So I went over and got set up, and I saw that I was in his line of sight. So I kept moving over to the next bluff and the next bluff and behind a tree to make sure that I was well out of his line of fire, just in case. But, in the end, we both got animals, and it was great.
And part of that memory was them helping me drag it, and I think one of them literally kicked it down a calm bank so that its rack would break, which it didn't, because there was a little bit of jealousy there dragging that deer out. I can't think of a bad experience I've had in the outdoors. I really can't. It's just, even a bad time outdoors is better than the best times a lot of places, like in this big media room right here.
10 or 11 years ago, I went prairie dog hunting out in New Mexico with three of my good friends, Warren Osborne, Joe Cass, and Jerry Halfridge. And we had 3 days of absolute heaven, if you like, shooting guns and talking knives.
I grew up doing a lot of rappelling and climbing, which is not very common for a city boy from Northern California, but we were rappelling off this place called Castle Rock, and we were going down rappelling, and we hear this hissing sound, psst, like snakes. You think it's a snake. Turns out it was baby owls. I didn't know baby owls hiss like that. We shine the light in there, we're expecting a snake, and it was baby owls. So I guess that was a good and bad thing, because I was totally scared, but then laughed afterwards.
So the most recent one that I can think of was actually just last year. I organized a martial arts training camp on the island of Palawan in the Philippines, and a very beautiful island. And the camp involved multiple boating trips to isolated islands, and every day we traveled to an island, had lunch out there, and trained out there. And it was just absolutely beautiful in the middle of the Philippines. So that would be the most recent great good experience that I had, was boating to isolated islands in the Philippines to train martial arts.
We've done some checkout dives, some procedural dives for certification in the cold California waters that weren't that interesting. But on our first real trip away, we ended up in Maui, Hawaii, and ended up taking a really beautiful pleasure yacht, a big catamaran with teak decks, out to a premier site, which is Malakini Crater, just off the coast of Maui. And the entire boatload of people went off to do boat things and snorkeling. And then me and my partner were the only ones who stayed with the dive master and were able to dive off the back of this teak deck boat and do this beautiful dive on Malakini Crater. And on the way back, as we were coming out, the dive master waved us off from the boat. As we surfaced, we realized why. It's because a squall had come up with whitecaps as the day heated up. These huge 10-foot waves were sweeping into the back of the catamaran, threatening to run us across the keels of the boat. And then ended up being really, really hairy as this boat was heaving up and down, trying to hit the ladders and be brought out of the ocean. And having survived that without having any fingers cut off or getting hit in the head with the boat, really had the wonder, the new sport, and the danger rolled into one. And that's probably a real one that I'll remember for the rest of my life.
One ranger knew where I was, but I was out in the middle of the woods. I had a GPS, I had it in my sternum strap on my bag. This is not a joke. I walked up to a stream. When I looked at the stream, I looked down and it popped out of the sternum strap and fell into the stream. It was like something from a movie.